The most excruciating breaking is the one done in complete silence. Every piece of your body hits the floor in the loudest way, but no one hears the shattering. No one hears because you have perfected the cleanup behind closed doors. And by the time someone looks into your eyes, not a trace of your broken soul remains. I once knew a 3-year-old little girl. She experienced excruciating anguish, terror, and feelings of helplessness because she was enslaved and trafficked. No one saw her fear, her devastation, the indescribable pain in her eyes, or the brokenness of her soul. Because of this little girl, I have spent my life learning how others endure their suffering in order to overcome. I have asked, why do they choose to endure? I have even asked, why do they choose to live rather than to die? I have also pondered how they have sheltered or protected themselves from continuous assaults to their soul. And I have looked for the signs of agony in others' eyes, similar to what I saw in that 3-year-old little girl's eyes, and wondered if and how suffering could be transmuted to something better. You see, I was that 3-year-old little girl. While no words can truly explain what I endured, the enormity of the pain, or the monumental effort it has taken to function in this world, I am here today to talk to you about my suffering, to let you know that it is possible and even probable to shelter yourself so that you can transform your pain into authentic power. Now, I did not know a time in my young life when the horror of sexual violence was not present. Yet, I survived. However, I remained a terrified little girl screaming for help within a woman's body. Even though I was no longer being abused, my very being and my very soul, I felt as if my very being and soul had been destroyed by the actions of my abusers. I was entrapped and alone in tornadic feelings of anguish, despair, and terror. And I experienced violent intrusive memories every day, at almost every moment, and for no apparent reason. And I convulsed in tears on the floor almost daily while clinging to anything I could find to keep myself alive. So the question is, how did I endure the suffering to overcome? And the answer is very slowly and very painfully. I learned to create a shelter or a sanctuary in my mind to protect myself from that which I could not yet handle until I learned the tools that I needed to deal with that which haunted my soul from my past experiences. My first shelter was that of intellect or rationalization. I went to graduate school to obtain a PhD in neuroscience, not only because I loved neuroscience and have been fascinated by it my whole life, but because I wanted to find the molecular weight of suffering. You see, every molecule has a certain molecular weight, and I wanted to find a molecule or a group of molecules that cause suffering and find a way to attenuate their impact so that it would reduce my pain, my suffering, and that of others. However, I quickly learned that the brain does not function quite so simply. I also learned that a shelter of academia is not an actual shelter. It's actually a facade or a Band-Aid for anybody, including myself. I was still experiencing tumultuous emotions that originated from my past, and I was acting from the place of that tortured, terrified little girl of the past. I also learned that no one was going to come save me from myself or from my inner demons. So I decided to look up what a shelter truly was. The English Oxford Dictionary states that a shelter is a place that safely harbors you from bad storms or weather. It also serves as a shield or protector from danger. As I read the definition of shelters, I realized that I had never had a safe harbor when I was growing up, and I feared I was not going to be able to figure out how to protect myself from that which I feared the most, which was myself and the terrified little girl that lived within. However, as a scientist, I empirically decided to go about learning how to create a sanctuary for myself. So I decided that I would treat my scared little metaphoric little girl that lived within me the way I had always wanted to be treated but had never experienced. I treated her with the same love and kindness that I would anyone else who was experiencing something similar. I read to her words of love, care, and compassion to remind her, as well as myself, that we were not alone, that we were safe and protected and loved. I also created a room. This room lived in my mind, as did my tortured little girl. I filled the room with heart-shaped cushions and pillows to remind me and my little girl that we had huge hearts full of compassion, no matter what anybody else had told us previously. I also painted all of the walls of each room with rainbows and sunflowers to remind my little girl of the light of love. In addition, I painted a huge tree that covered all the walls of the room, and I stocked the room with coloring books, crayons, paints, and books that I had voraciously read as a child. When my little girl felt scared and alone, I pointed to the tree, and I taught her that trees have roots which anchor deeply into the earth. They also have branches which open wide to the sky with hope and possibility. I also taught her that trees weather so many different storms, whether it be snow, rain, earthquakes, tornadoes, because they are so deeply rooted. And I let her know that she too could root herself into the ground while she weathered her emotional storms. So we actually practiced tree pose and firmly anchored our feet into the ground, envisioning roots emanating deep into the earth while we weathered our emotional storm. When my little girl felt in despair or hopeless, I pointed out the sunflowers that were painted on the walls, and I reminded her that sunflowers are always a symbol of hope because they always look to the sun. To further engender hope, together we both drew a huge sun and colored it such a yellow color and practiced pointing our sunflowers to that sun. I read books to her, and she read books to me. And finally, I taught her about gratitude by letting her know that everybody has dark days filled with dark clouds. But if you look closely enough, there's always a rainbow of kindness in those clouds, whether it be a kind word from a teacher, a smile from a stranger, or words from a book that remind us that there is something better for us in life. I did all of this while my adult self learned to use her voice and speak her truth, no matter how much it shook. As I talked about my pain from the past, I was able to release my pain, and I was able to confront the emotional wounds of the past that kept me trapped there. It took time and much hard work, but eventually I was able to love myself, and importantly, I was able to love and have compassion for that terrified little girl that, of course, lived metaphorically within. So as I practice these tactics that are currently being studied for how they positively impact the brain, I learned that I was an empowered, intelligent, and brave individual, as are all of you here today. I also learned that the core belief that I am enough comes only when I live inside my story with compassion. And this is true for us all. So choose to shelter yourself with love during life's storms, as only love and self-compassion can help you overcome your painful circumstances and transform you into something better. Thank you.